Merry Christmas. I wish. I wish it wasn't so busy. I wish it wasn't so chaotic. I wish there weren't so many parties and family obligations and sing-alongs and church services and work. I wish it wasn't so chaotic, so hectic. I wish the expectations weren't so high. I wish the season wasn't characterized by the chaos and the busyness that I seem to experience. I seem to get caught up in all of the activity and the demands and the expectations of the season. And I find it easy to lose track of why we're even doing this. And what do you think of these decorations? Do you like these decorations? Are these kind of cool? We could go to the store and buy these. A year ago, we were talking about doing a series and play on the words presents and presents, and I said, let's hang presents, and you realize what the big barn in this room is. Those are big. Those are huge, and we had to make them. So Susie Keck and Joe McKenzie from our facilities team, Susie from our creative team, they designed these things. They spent 3 or 4 months building these things, wrapping each one, building every one, Then they spent a couple weeks up in the catwalks, running all the wires, running all the cables, hanging everything. Everybody on our staff doubles down during this time. They work twice as hard. They're going and hosting events and parties and coming to all of the activities that we have going on. This is no time to be in ministry because you lose track of the season. It's not the materialism of our culture. It's not because somebody took Christ out of Christmas. It's because we got so busy. Because life is so chaotic. I realize you may be thinking, well, Dave, you're just bumming us out. Thanks for harshing our mellow right now, dragging us down, making us feel terrible about this. I don't think I'm alone. I don't think I'm the only one that finds themselves just going from event to event, from expectation to expectation, and I turn around and I haven't even considered what this is really all about. That's why when we were planning this Christmas season, I was thinking, what do I want us to do? I want us to shift our focus. We came upon the story of the wise men from the east, the Magi, and particularly their gifts, their offering, their presents. We realized that at the core of it, it's not about presents, it's about presence. It's about His presence among us. It's about our presence with one another, and it's about the presence of faith and hope and love in our lives. That's at the core of it. So we've been searching for that. Lessons from the Magi about faith and about hope. And today, we come to the lesson about love. And what do the Magi, what do these ambiguous astrologers from the East teach us about love, particularly love in the chaos and the craziness, in the demands and the expectations of this season? What can we learn about love? What should we remember about love in the busyness of this season from the lesson of the Magi? But before we explore that, would you pray with me for a moment? Father in heaven, I would ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in your sight, that you would use your words spoken by your servant and anointed by your Spirit to remind us of what's underneath it all, what's behind it all, what's at the center of it all. That your presence among us changed everything, and that our presence with one another is the greatest present we can present. Pray that we would remember that for just a moment today. I ask that for myself and for my family and for all of us here. For I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. The story of the Magi is recorded for us in the 2nd chapter of Matthew's Gospel. He says that after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod, about that time, wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, "Where is this newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. He called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of religious law and asked, "Where is this Messiah supposed to be born?" "In Bethlehem in Judea," they said. "This is what the prophet wrote. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah. For a ruler will come from you who will be the shepherd for my people, Israel." Then Herod called for a private meeting with the wise men, and he learned from them the time when the star first appeared. Then he told them, "Go to Bethlehem, search carefully for the child, and when you find him, come back and tell me, so that I can go and worship him too." After this interview, the wise men went their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasure chests and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. When it was time to leave, they returned to their own country by another route, for God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. As you read that story, you may think, well, what does this teach us about love? What can I learn about love from these magi? Well, maybe we can learn about love from the image of Mary and the child. We can learn about maternal love, or maybe we can learn about spiritual love from their worship, because for God so loved the world that he gave his son. Well, what do we learn about love from the magi? I came into this wondering what that was. What we learned about faith was easy. What we learned about hope from the Magi, I kind of got that. But what do I learn about love from the Magi? And as I unpacked this story and as I thought about it and meditated on it, I found some unexpected things. Not so much that I learned some things, but I was reminded of some things. And I want to share with you three lessons that I learned about love from the Magi. The first one was I learned that love is curious. I'd never thought about that before. I never thought that love is curious, but it is. If you think about it, if I love someone, I want to get to know them. I want to know what's inside of them. The curiosity to understand them is what leads to intimacy. There is no intimacy without curiosity. When my wife and I were first married, I used to ask her all the time, "What are you thinking? What are you doing? What's going on? Tell me, because I don't understand. I can't read your mind. You have to tell me." And she would say, "I'm annoyed that you keep asking me what I'm thinking." Because I wanted to know. I remember when my children were first born, when they were infants, I would see them laying in their crib, and I would go, "Who are you? I love you more than I've ever loved anything or anyone in my life, but I don't know you. Are you clever? Are you smart? Are you funny? Can you sing? Can you dance? I don't know anything about you. I'm so curious. My love compels me to know about you," because there is no intimacy without curiosity. We're born that way. We're hardwired that way. We're hardwired to explore, to ask questions, to wonder. We're hardwired to search. This is what the Magi were. They were curious. They were scientists. They were astronomers. They were curious about the promises, the prophecies. They were curious about the astrological anomalies and the historical prophecies. It was their curiosity that drove them. But it was a passionate curiosity. It tells us in Matthew that as they arrived in Jerusalem and they were looking for this newborn king, that they said they saw his star. And they had come not just to know him, but to worship him. They were compelled by the idea of this hope and this love that would be poured out on them. And they were curious about it. They wanted to know. They asked questions. that childlike inquisition. I mean, did your children ever ask you those things? They ask you, why does this happen? Why does that happen? What goes on here? It's constant barrage of questions. I remember when my 3 or 4-year-old daughter, Kaya, asked me, Dad, does God love the devil? And I went, I got to go back to seminary. I don't know. That's a great question. That's an incredible question. Because curiosity is part of love. How do I express my love? I ask, how you doing? What's going on with you? Where are you hurting? How can I help? Tell me about yourself. I learned this from the Magi. Now, not all curiosity is motivated by love, but love is always curious. How can I help? What can I know? Teach me, tell me, show me. Let me know you. First thing I learned about love from the Magi, surprisingly, was that love is curious. The second thing I learned is that love is generous. Yeah, now, if you're paying attention, you say, Dave, you just now figured that out? You just figured out that love is generous? No, it's not like I didn't know that. What I learned from the Magi was one particular aspect of the generosity of love that I so easily forget. I so easily forget that love is generous joyfully. A lot of times I'm generous out of guilt. I'm generous out of obligation or responsibility. I'm generous to set an example. I'm generous because it's necessary to get what I want. But love is generous joyfully. There's a joy in generosity. This is that feeling that you get when you recognize that it truly is better to give than to receive. It's a true saying. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Because if you think about it, which would you rather be? The person that has the means to meet a need, or the person that will not survive if someone else doesn't meet their need? I think we would all rather be the person who has the ability to meet needs. It's not just that it's more blessed to give than to receive. It's more satisfying. It's more meaningful. Because love is generous, but not just generous, joyfully generous, like your children. Did your children ever give you crap? And I don't mean a hard time, I mean junk. Did they ever give you junk? Did they ever walk through the woods and find a leaf and run up to you and say, oh, I got this for you, Mom? Or pick up a stick and say, see, would you, I found this stick, it's yours. Or a seashell on the beach. Or if you come into my office sometime, you'll find a little pile of rocks on a file cabinet, a little pile of stones. And one of the stones was a stone I found in Israel. I was on a doctoral study trip in Israel years ago with a bunch of nerdy PhD theologians. And we were in the central part of Israel, and our guide said, we're coming up near the boundary of Philistia. In the time of King David, this is probably where David and Goliath fought. And there was this open field there, and they pulled off the bus, and the 12 nerds and me got off. And we're walking around the field. And as we're walking around the field, I bent down, and I picked up a rock, and I went, this is it. This is the rock that killed Goliath. I know it is. Look, there's a blood stain. And that's in my office. I have the Goliath rock in my office. And then on that little pile of stones are 3 little stones. I don't know if you can see them. I don't know which of my daughters gave them to me, but over the years, they, when we were in Colorado or on the farm in Pennsylvania or in California, they would come up to me and go, Dad, this is really an interesting rock. It's really a pretty rock. And I only kept 3 of them to remind me of the 3 of them. But you know the joy of it? The joy they had in giving, the joy in saying, "This is for you. I'm giving this to you." We lose track of that. We lose track of the expression of love through joyful generosity. When Diane and I were first married, we had left our homes on the East Coast a week after we got married, and we moved to Dallas. And she took a teaching job, and I was in graduate school, and I was working at nights, and she was working in the summers. And for all of that, we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, but we were alone for our first Christmas ever. And I remember I I said, I'm going to make this really special for her. I'm going to get her some really great gifts. And so I saved up for the 3 months before Christmas, and I squirreled money away. I lied to her about how much we had in the bank and hid money so that for Christmas I could buy her all these amazing gifts. And I saved up, and I bought her this thing that was really, really cool. I bought her a microwave oven. Now you have to realize this was 1979. This was when microwaves were like really expensive. I mean, you probably pay like $80 for it now, but it was hundreds of dollars. We didn't have hundreds of dollars, and it was a microwave. It was amazing, and I know the kind of person she is, so she would say, I don't know how to use it, so I bought her a set of microwave cookbooks. I bought her a set of microwave cookware, and I bought her some other stuff that wouldn't benefit me, too, you know, some jewelry and some perfume. But I was so excited. I remember how excited I was about it, and I hid the gifts at my friend's house. And he had them under his tree. And so on Christmas morning, you know, we got up and I was all sheepish. Sorry, I couldn't get you anything, you know, I love you and we have each other. And she was great about it. I said, let's go for a walk. Let's just, beautiful Dallas Christmas morning, and we're out walking. I said, let's stop in at Chuck's house. And we walk into Chuck's house, and there under the tree are these, and the microwave's an impressive present. I mean, that was one of those big microwaves, like tabletop microwave. And it was all wrapped, and there were presents. I said, Chuck, you got a lot of presents. He goes, it's weird. They're all to Diane. And I was like, yes, oh, look at this, how great. I remember how enthusiastic I was. I've been that way ever since. I think this is the joy that the Magi felt. It says that after they left Herod, they went on to Bethlehem, and the star guided them. And the star pointed out exactly where the home was that Jesus was in. And it says when they saw the star and they knew they had found him, they were filled with joy, because now they could present him with their gifts. Now they could open their treasure chests and give him the gold and the frankincense and myrrh. And that's the joy that is the generous joy of love. Now, not all generosity is motivated by joy. Not all generosity feels joyful. Sometimes we're generous because we're supposed to be, or we have to be. Sometimes we're generous because we feel guilty about how much we have, and we feel like we need to share it with others. But love may not motivate generosity, but love is always generous. Love is always curious. And the third thing I learned about love from the Magi is that love is dangerous. I know there's some of you here going, now you tell me. Thanks, this is information I could have used before I met them. You know why we call it falling in love? Because falling is bad. Falling is a bad thing. Because you're falling, you're like, ah! Love is dangerous stuff. And you know why it's dangerous stuff? Because it's a journey into the unknown. It's dangerous because love propels you into a place you cannot anticipate and you cannot prepare for. Every time I do a wedding and a couple is standing in front of me, I realize this is the last time they will be the people that they are. As they journey together in love, they will shape each other differently, and because of that love, they will be changed. But I cannot tell you what that will look like. I cannot tell you how that will happen. I just know that it will, and that's the danger of love. In a world where we want to control and manage everything, love pushes us down a path that is undefined and uncertain. This was where the Magi were. Magi had seen a star in the east and probably collected some prophetic writings and said, these things are coming together. Let's take the risk. Let's enter into the unknown. Let's search for this. Let's choose the riskier, the more dangerous path. And it led them to Jerusalem, where they were asking, and the word got back to King Herod, it says, that they were asking where this newborn king of the Jews was. And Herod, what you have to realize is Herod was a murdering sociopath. And when it says that Herod was deeply disturbed, he was deeply disturbed on a good day. But this news deeply disturbed him, and so he asked his spiritual advisors, his magi, his wise men, what does the prophet say? Where is this promised king to be born? And they said, in Bethlehem. So he called the magi in. He said, hey, fellas, about when was it that you saw this star in the sky? And they told him, and probably within a couple of years they had first seen it. And he said, well, from what I understand, you're headed for Bethlehem. So when you get there and you find this newborn king of the Jews, you come back and you tell me so I can worship him. But not only was Herod a murdering sociopath, he was a pathological liar, because we know what happened. We know that after the wise men failed to return and tell him where this child was, he gave orders that every child in the region of Judah, every male child under 2 years of age, was to be executed. One of the most horrific genocidal commands ever. And it tells us that the Magi, when they were preparing to leave, were warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, so they went back a different route. And they disobeyed this genocidal maniac. And it wasn't like they got on a plane and flew home. It's that they traveled within striking distance of where Herod was for days, if not weeks, knowing that they were disobeying this sociopath, knowing that the more dangerous path was the path to protect this child, was the path of love. Love is always the more dangerous path, the more risky path. It's dangerous because it requires a commitment to journey into the unknown, a commitment to search for something that you cannot quite define. See, this is what I learned about love from the Magi. I was surprised as I started thinking about these things. I learned that love is curious, and that love is joyfully generous, and that love is dangerous. You could say love is courageous. I learned these things from the Magi as they came, and of the presence that they presented. It was the presence of their love that was the gift that we can give. They gave gold and frankincense and myrrh. They gave these three simple gifts, but the gift behind the gift was the gift of their presence. It is the gift that we can give. It is the gift that is buried underneath the rubble of all of the chaos and all of the parties and all of the meetings, is the gift of our presence. The presence of our faith, the presence of our hope, and the presence of our love. I don't know, I think most of us have a love-hate relationship with this season. There's things about it that we love and things about it that make us crazy. We overspend and we overeat and we overparty and we overcommit, and we get to the end of it and we're exhausted and broke and wonder why we did that, and we say we'll never do that again, and we do it again next year. I have a love-hate relationship with this season. There's parts of it that I love and parts of it that just drive me insane. And I think the thing that caused me to dread the holiday season more than any one event was fruitcakes. And it's not what you think about fruitcakes. It's not that these food for the zombie apocalypse are some kind of celebration to the birth of Jesus, because nothing says the birth of the Savior like a piece of cake that weighs more than a black hole and tastes like one too. But for me, it was the Collins Street Bakery fruitcakes. They come in little white boxes with red printing. See, when we moved from the East Coast to Dallas and we were trying to support ourselves, I got a job at the United Parcel Service. And I worked on the midnight shift at the Dallas sorting hub, which meant that every day at 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, I would go in, work for a few hours. They would bring trucks in from all over the state of Texas. Some came in by rail, some drove in, and then we would sort the packages and send them out to the other parts of the country. This was before air shipping. This was before barcode scanners. You had to, manual was very analog. You had to physically look at the label, and I got to tell you, some of your handwriting is atrocious. and look at the label, and you had to do 1,000 to 1,200 packages an hour, so you're looking at them, sorting them, loading them, unloading them. And Christmas was a nightmare because the volume that came through our hub on that one shift doubled and tripled during Christmas time. I can't even imagine what it's like now. Just the stuff I order from Amazon is more than would go through that Dallas hub in a Christmas season. But there was one day, well, it was actually 2 or 3 days, when the Collins Street Bakery in Corsicana, Texas, would decide to ship all of the fruitcakes to everyone who's being punished for being bad that year. And that was thousands and thousands of fruitcakes. And they would come in what was called a drop shipment. It was a drop shipment, and what a drop shipment was a 40-footer coming from one location, going out to the four corners of the earth. And they would send 3 or 4 40-foot semi-trailers filled with fruitcakes. And they would show up on the midnight shift all at once, back up to a door, and it was a tsunami of fruitcakes that would come through the building. And you would get, covered over by fruitcake. Just the sight of a Collins Street Bakery fruitcake box can make me apoplectic. And so it was difficult to remember the joy of the season as I'm being covered over in a mountain of moving fruitcake boxes. We all have fruitcake stories. I mean, if you're working retail, I'm sure that you know this is make or break time. You're working 12 and 14, 16-hour days. If you're in the medical profession, you know everybody's paid up their deductible. I want to do that procedure before the end of the year, so I can get in under the wire. And doctors and nurses and physical therapists and people in the medical industry are up to their eyes at this time of year. If you're a young parent taking kids to concerts and parties and going, it's easy, not just for ministry professionals, but for all of us to lose track of what really this is about. I want to tell you, in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of the expectations, in the midst of the demands, in the midst of the disappointments, in the midst of the busyness of the season, it's still there. Born in a manger, invading the history of humanity, inserting himself into our lives, is the gift of his presence. And the greatest present that we can present to one another is to be fully present in this season. It is his presence and our presence that is under all of the chaos, under all of the demands and expectations. It's still there. It's what I wish for. Merry Christmas.